Okay, so while that's going on, I did have a few of your colleagues ask me to do this hybrid. Since this is my first time, I wasn't able to set up hybrid, but we are planning on recording it, and I'll send a link to them if that's okay. And the first part of this is kind of an overview of the arts grant landscape. I was thinking we might cut that bit out and put it on our website for our research development website for other folks to use, if that's okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna object to recording. It's just there, so you guys are not on camera.
So Lauren, I went to the accounts.
Yep.
Here, and then what was next?
Okay, so if you don't have an account, click the sign in
Okay.
in the upper right thing, and then click the need to create a new profile.
Oh, I see.
And those come to me for approval, so I'll approve them kind of in between the first and second part. Hello, welcome. Grab a seat. Please make sure to sign in so we know that you're here. There's coffee, hot tea, fruit, and less healthy danishes. Help yourself. And it's okay if my office records this to put the first part on our website and to share all of it with your colleagues who couldn't make it. Okay, great. Okay. Everyone either already has a Spin account or has requested one? Good? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited about this. You guys are my very first workshop training, so please give me feedback. If you don't like what I'm doing, that's okay. Tell me so I can do better. If you like what I'm doing, let me know so I know that it's actually okay. So the way that I'm hoping to kind of structure what we're doing today, I'm going to start with kind of a bird's eye overview of the arts and arts-related field grant landscape is some of the things to kind of pay attention to. Now, how many of you guys have had a grant in the past? Okay, about half of you. So please feel free to jump in with information that I don't know. I just started this. I came from the sciences. So if there's big things or categories that I'm missing, please share your information with your colleagues so that they know as well. But I'm not going to be able to cover all of the thousands and thousands of grants in the arts and arts-related field grant landscape. So we're also going to talk about how you can find grants, especially ones that are more particularized to your research or your creative work, whatever it is that you're doing, through the SPIN database, which is a resource that READY provides to all JMU, the entire JMU community. We'll also talk about grants.gov if we have time. And then hopefully at the end of this, we can kind of take some time searching individually, and I'll be walking around to kind of help and answer questions, because the SPIN database is a little finicky at times. If you've used it before, you might know that. Does that sound good for structure? Okay. So in terms of why apply for external funding, it may or may not be necessary for the work you're doing. I also want to highlight some other benefits that external funding can provide. So most of you guys are probably on 10-month contracts, maybe. So supplemental pay, a lot of grants, if you do your work in the summer, you're allowed to pay yourself for your work in the summer. More money is always good. You can also get, grants are to support your research, your scholarship, and your creative work. That includes, for a lot of them, travel funding. You can also put together some sort of conference or event. There are conference grants, okay? So you can bring people to JMU to talk about whatever it is, the area that you're working on. Career advancement, there's also collaboration and networking opportunities. Some grants can have multiple PIs, so you can find someone whose work complements yours well and work together on a funding opportunity. And then of course, more resources, more money for what it is that you want to do. And then when you get a grant, you're bringing in other people to your work and having them say, this is important, this is good. And so you're also impacting your discipline, okay, and how it's interacting with other disciplines as well. So that's kind of why we should care about it. So like I said, we're going to kind of start with a survey of arts and arts-related fields, the funding landscape, okay? And there are different ways I could have organized this, okay, in terms of how we can break down grants. So the main way that we kind of tend to categorize grants in this office is government grants, which often kind of follow a similar sort of structure and policies, versus foundation grants, which can kind of be a little bit more all over the place. But you could also characterize different grants by what their goals or aims are. So there are grants that kind of call for creative work, for like the practice of art. If you're going to make some work of art or put on some sort of performance or something. There's also kind of this grants for the study of art, if you want to do a research project on kind of already existing art or architecture. I'm using art broadly here. And then, of course, there are grants for public outreach or engagement, if that's something that you want to do or that's part of your work, that there are grants specifically for that. Okay, I'm going to kind of try and cover all three of those areas. Anyone want to jump in with anything? Okay. So when it comes to government grants, the big ones kind of in the arts and arts-related fields would be NEA and NEH. Okay, I'm going to start with NEA because that's the one that has arts in the name. So it's sort of the one that, it may not actually be the best one for your project, but it's kind of the obvious place to start. Okay, and the workhorse for the NEA is the grants for arts projects. This one, you can get grants for any of those three things. Okay, they are not restricted specifically to any of, whether production of creative works or arts-related research or public outreach. But if you look at what they have funded in the past, they mostly fund the production of creative works. Some sort of performance or exhibition or something like that. That's really their main focus. Like I said, that doesn't mean that you can't apply for kind of the other categories, but that's sort of their focus. And they have, for most things, 2 annual cycles, with the applications due in February and in July. So we're kind of in between a cycle right now. I say that there's 2 annual cycles, but I know the D and SADA is for design, and design is one of the exceptions. Design participates in the February cycle only. So when you submit a grant for arts projects, you have to choose a particular category to submit it in. Okay, and so ones that might be relevant here, design, visual arts, media arts, I don't know, multidisciplinary or presenting works, and then folks and traditional arts. But I wanted to list all of these because SADA is a big thing with lots of people, and you know, people do all sorts of different things. So this is kind of the workhorse of the NEA, but it's not the only one. Okay. The other one that's kind of a better fit for the category of research on art project is named Research Grants in the Arts. This one is an annual cycle, only happens once a year. Applications tend to be due in March. And they have a research agenda. So when you submit to it, you have to say that you're aligning in one of these 3 categories. And there's detailed information on their website for what they're looking for in each of these 3 categories. So the current ones up until 2026 are health and wellness for individuals. So how does art contribute to that? Cognition and learning, and then U.S. economic growth and innovation. Okay. So kind of trying to connect the research that you're doing on art broadly construed to one of these 3 categories. So this is kind of 1-sentence summaries for each of those. Okay. So the first one is contribute to the healing or revitalization of communities as well as individuals in communities. Then they also want to know about the state of diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility in the arts. So if your research touches on that. And then also looking at how the arts ecosystem is adapting and changing to social, economic, and technological changes and challenges. So this is specifically what they're doing. It might or might not align with the sort of research that you're doing if that's kind of the direction that you're going. And then a third one that I just kind of want to throw out there, that's another big NEA program, is it's called Our Town. This one is kind of more public outreach focused. So in terms of those 3 categories, if you're looking at doing something engaging the public, A unique thing about our town is every grant that's submitted to that has to have two components. One is an arts-related nonprofit, that would be SADA, and some sort of local government or quasi-governmental agency. So those two groups have to come together to partner in these grants. That's on an annual cycle in August. Okay. Any kind of questions about those? Some important information if you're applying for an NEA grant. The NEA, all three of those programs requires what we call cost matching or cost sharing, which is that the NEA will not fund your entire project. For every dollar that the NEA puts in, you have to show them that you're getting a dollar from somewhere else. And somewhere else has to be not the federal government. So it can be a Virginia State Fund grant, it can be something from CVPA or SADA, but you have to have some sort of cost sharing between them. That doesn't necessarily mean cash, okay? So if you're applying for one of these and you're making your budget, contact the Office of Sponsored Programs early, because depending on the grant, sometimes you're allowed to count resources that JMU provides for you, like studio space, that sort of thing, that if you weren't at JMU, if you were an independent artist, you might have to pay for, can often count towards the cost sharing. So in terms of, so sometimes people see this and they just shut down, they're like, well, I can't do that. Don't do that, but do talk to OSP early if you're going after one of these, so they can kind of work with you to figure out what counts and what doesn't out of what you have.
What is OSP?
Office of Sponsored Programs. And they're literally across the hall. So you now know where they are. They are friendly. The third session, we're going to be talking about the different divisions of JMU to help you with your grants. So we'll talk about some of the acronyms that I'm going to be throwing out, like OSP and ORI and CFR. Okay.
I'm still learning.
We will have a whole session on that. This is my advertisement for why you should come back.
Yes.
Funding levels, everyone wants to know how much money can they give me. Grants for arts projects range from $10,000 to $100,000. For the research grants for the arts, they kind of break it down. If you are collecting data, maybe you're going out and doing some sort of survey of how people interact with an artwork or something with that. So if you need to do data acquisition, they'll give you between $50,000 and $100,000. If you are using already existing data, then they give you less, $20,000 to $50,000. And our town, that ranges from $20,000 to $100,000. Okay. One of the downsides with the Grants for Arts project is that only one proposal per organization can be submitted a year. Okay. That does not mean tackle your colleagues and break their computers. But it does mean that if everyone's trying to go after that, we either will need to ask you to think about whether you could be co-PIs and put your grants together for a common purpose. Okay, so if you are applying for a gap that is maybe $20,000 and you're applying for one at $30,000, could possibly try and argue that your projects complement each other in a way. Okay. The other thing is that I talked to the Office of Sponsored Programs because it says per organization, and what is an organization. They do think that SADA, the Dance and Theater School, that each one counts as a separate organization. So that also means that you're not in competition or trying to combine proposals with folks over in theater or dance. Now you can if you want. If you have a great proposal that is putting together your work and someone in theater and dance, you can have co-PIs.
But when you said the only one proposal per organization is a kind of school-wide and not university.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to the best of my knowledge, we haven't had multiple gap proposals in the past. It'd be great if we, ran into this problem.
Right. And actually, I want to let you know it's a STAD, S-T-A-D.
I put it backwards. Apologies.
No.
I'll fix that certainly before I talk to anyone from there.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. So that's the NEA. Any questions on NEA programs? Okay. Helpful?
They're very helpful.
Okay, great. NEH, National Endowment for the Humanities. So of course, if you start Googling, is arts part of the humanities, you're going to get answers all over the place. So what does the NEH say? Do they fund arts and related fields? Okay, so this is from the NEH's website itself, and they do say that they will fund criticism and theory of the arts, and that is from the NEH's founding legislation. Okay, so if you look up the law that founded the NEH, how do they define humanities in there? That is very big list. So criticism and theory of the arts is definitely in there. Practice of the arts, not really. Okay. I do want to just kind of flag, if you go to the NEH homepage, they've kind of cut down their definition of humanities that they put on their homepage, and that is not in their current list on there. The way that I personally would interpret that is, if you apply for it, they're not going to throw out your application the same way they would if I, a particle physicist, tried to apply for a humanities grant. But you are competing with these other fields that may be higher in their funding priorities. Okay. I do also want to say, when I was going through the list of NEH grants, some of them actually did specifically mention arts-related fields. So there are grants in public humanities, and if you go through their list of like, what is this, their like 2-paragraph list of what public humanities are, that one actually specifically mentions art history. So I would not rule out any NEH grant, but bonus points if you're in art history and you find one that specifically mentions art history. So unlike the NEA, which has just a relatively small number of annual programs, NEH has a lot, and I'm not going to try to go through them all. So I'll give a few kind of the big ones, okay, but feel free to, as you're searching the second part of this, to look around at it. So like I said, NEH, they fund the study of art, okay, not so much the production of creative works. They also have a big public engagement focus. So if you are going after something that has public engagement, if that's the work that you're doing, those are kind of the 2 categories that they do. The main workhorse for the NEH in terms of schools like JMU is this humanities initiatives at colleges and universities. And that is an extremely broad program. Okay, so they are happy to fund basic research. Okay, they are happy to fund pedagogical research, which is something that I didn't see in NEA. So if you want to take a different approach to teaching art or some arts-related material in your classes, and you want to do some work on revamping how it's taught, NEH would consider funding that. Community engagement or community projects, something that, again, the NEH would do through this. And these grants can last longer than the NEA grants. So these last up to 3 years, and in terms of funding amounts, up to $150,000. NEH does not generally require cost sharing. So that is a difference with NEA as well. I think when I was going through SEDA's kind of faculty and what you guys do, I was seeing a lot of kind of interdisciplinary work. So I do want to flag, NEH has this humanities connections. And in this case, the grant has to have at least 2 PIs, 1 person in a humanities related field and 1 person who's not. Okay, so you plus someone who is not in the humanities, to kind of work together on how the humanities connect to something else. These come in 2 categories: a planning grant, where you're kind of planning out or testing your idea for how your project is going to go, and then implementing it. You don't have to have a planning grant, I believe, to get an implementation grant, if I remember right. Other NEH opportunities. Okay. So the first ones in NEA, you have to have some particular project that you are pitching to them. The NEH also has NEH Fellows, where basically you're going to present your work portfolio, and this then funds you based on the value of your work to scholars or to the public, okay, to keep doing the important work that you're doing. So this is kind of pitching you as a researcher as to pitching this particular project, if that makes sense. And then public engagement grants, there are huge categories of this. This is a huge focus of the NEH right now. So public scholars, that is if you are preparing some sort of book for the public. So maybe you think that something is underappreciated in the art world and you have a book project that's aimed not at scholars but at the general public. Conversely, maybe you think that books are, you know, so old school and you want to do radio or a podcast or a film. And that's media projects, and they will also provide funding for that. Again, the key thing is aimed at the public. And then any public programming can go under public humanities projects. So film you could do, media projects, or this has a slightly different budget range. So if you're doing something completely new and novel that doesn't fit into the first two categories, there it is. Another focus that they have right now is especially digital projects, the digital humanities. There are 3 or 4 different NEH grants that I came across relating to that. So if you are trying to build some sort of digital resource or digital experience or something, I'm happy to kind of talk about that. I'll just throw out there, because maybe it's of interest to someone's research, they also still have this Culture and Community Resilience Grant, where connecting humanities to communities and specifically using the lens of COVID-19 and climate change. Okay. So usually most people are like, yeah, that's not really me, but every once in a while you might get someone that's like, wait, that's exactly what I'm doing. So, okay. Questions on NEH? Okay. Those are the 2 government agencies that I'm going to focus on, but I'm going to just say don't roll out the others. Okay. For example, NSF actually has this current proposal on human-computer interaction. And if you read through, one of the things that they want projects on is computing for creativity. Do you guys think art has anything to say about creativity and computers?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Everybody's using it.
So, you know, I'm just going to throw out there, you know, sometimes people see NSF and they're like, I am not a scientist, you know, and totally ignore it. You know, so those could be a little bit more of a stretch, or a little bit more of a challenge to find something in your area. But just because I focus on NEA and NEH doesn't mean ignore all this other stuff.
Right. No, it's actually really wonderful that the, there's a NSF is talking about the computer for creativity. That was actually my question, you know, because a lot of us doing it with the computer.
Yeah, so, okay. That was all federal government. There is Virginia Humanities, okay? And they're kind of in the vein of the NEH, where they will fund study of art and public engagement, but not the practice of art. There they're very clear that if you want to put on some sort of exhibition or performance or something, they want to know that there's that it's part of a bigger study, or there's a public discussion element that's kind of closer, more closely tied to what they think of as the humanities. But the nice thing is that this is very flexible. They are happy to fund exhibits, again, as long as there is some sort of tie-in. Public outreach, any sort of research, as long as you say that there's a public component. I missed my end quotation marks. So it is a lot more flexible than the other grants. It's also smaller. It also comes in 2 types. There's regular grants. Those they evaluate twice yearly, so in June and January. And then they have something called rapid grants. That's 4 times a year. Those are just a fixed $5,000. Okay. The last thing that I kind of want to do before we dive into actually finding funding for you is talk a little bit about foundation and non-government grants. I just want to give brief shout out to corporate foundation relations. So what we do here in this building is we focus on grants, pretty much. And so I'm going to be talking about grants issued by foundations. but a huge number of foundations do not fund through grants, okay? They just kind of partner with different people or organizations or projects and give money directly to them. So if you come across a foundation that you're like, you know, I'm reading this mission statement of the foundation, what they fund, it looks exactly what I do, but they don't seem to be offering grants, don't just throw that out the window. The people to talk to are the folks over in corporate and foundation relations, who we will be talking about in a few weeks, because they go through how do you develop a relationship with that foundation, how can you, so that they can start funding you directly, as opposed to, my office is a lot more focused on how do you apply for grants from foundations. Even if you're applying for a grant from a foundation, we might send you to talk to CFR, especially if they have expertise already with that foundation. Again, highlight for 3 weeks from now, but I did kind of want to say, as you're going through things, especially as you're searching in SPIN or elsewhere, don't throw it out just because they're not issuing grants right now. So some general advice when it comes to foundation grants, you know, the nice thing about government grants is, you know, if it's a Virginia one, they fund in Virginia. If it's a federal grant, they fund federally. I've heard that NEA tries to hit every single congressional district, or at least they used to, I don't know if they still do. When it comes to foundations, they do not necessarily have that same focus. So I always say, advise people, when you're looking at foundations, see if you can find a list of the projects they've funded over the past few years, and check and see if, what types they fund, like is it creative works or research or public engagement. Looks at the types of grantees. There are some that look great, but then you go through the types of grantees and you see that there's no colleges or universities or educational institutions there. It's all kind of independent organizations, museums, whatever. That doesn't necessarily mean don't apply, but it does mean to realize that it may not be the best fit. And then also, especially when it comes to arts and arts-related fields, location of grantees. There are some that have a national reach, but then you see over the last 7 years, they've only given it to folks in New York City. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean don't apply, but it's also good to kind of know. And then the last thing is, do you need an invitation to apply? So some of the major foundations, they don't consider grants. Some of them you can pitch an idea to, and then if they like it, they'll invite you to apply. Some of them, you just can't contact them. You know, they will find you. So I'll throw out some of the big ones here. Mellon Foundation is a huge founder. Mellon kind of works 2 ways. One is by directly funding big things. So these are often multi-million-dollar, you know, or hundreds of thousands of dollars grants. And they don't do that many of these. You have to kind of be invited to apply, although they do encourage people to submit short inquiries of this is your project. Now, you've probably seen a lot of like, thanks to Mellon, founded by Mellon, funded by Mellon. They also like to fund other people to run grant things. So I'm not covering those separately, but you'll see, especially in different arts-related programs, that like a Mellon program for this that's being run by, say, City University of New York or something. In which case, Mellon gave a huge grant to City University of New York, and now they are using that grant to fund other grants. And so, just kind of wanted to explain that. So how Mellon works is you can submit an inquiry where you like pitch your idea briefly, like think a paragraph. If they like it or they're kind of like, yeah, we'll consider that, then they'll say a concept paper. That's a pre-proposal. That's what we'll be talking about next week. And then if they like your pre-proposal, then they'll say, sure, go ahead and send us a full proposal. They do not have a specific schedule. So the government grants have a like, applications are due this date, you know. Mellon, yeah, whatever. One advantage of Mellon is that they have a national reach. They really do, unlike a lot of the other foundations. There are specific grant-making areas, and they are very clear that you can only apply to one, okay? So they don't want to get your thing all over the place. 2 areas that seem relevant, arts and culture programs, okay? So this, if you look up what they're asking for here, they want exceptional creative practice, scholarship, and conservation. It does say they work with artists, curators, conservation scholars, and organizations. So I would not, so obviously what we do here at JMU fits within that. I do want to kind of highlight, though, that when I went through the recent grants there, I did not see very many to institutions of higher ed. So these, a lot of them go to museums or performance groups. So even though they include scholarship, I didn't actually see a huge number of them going to scholarship projects. I also did not read through the entire list. So that doesn't say, give up on it. But definitely if you're thinking about developing or presenting some sort of new creative work, it might go there. Again, Mellon likes big things though, so this is something where you might try to see if you can bring other people in to make it kind of a bigger program.
I think they also offer scholarship for graduate students.
Yes.
Foundation.
Yes.
So whoever is ABD and interested in that.
Thank you. The other area that where you will see universities show up a lot is higher learning. Okay, so this has arts doesn't show up in the name there. They do talk about humanistic inquiry and American culture. So there's definitely places for arts to come in there. And I didn't put the year here, but I did see Ohio State got a $2 million grant for a community engagement project with arts and arts education. So this is something where arts goes in there. They currently have a focus on equitable access and diversity, so you can see that this was more community engagement. This goes to university or colleges, and this is also where you might find where they have given funding to some college or organization that then funds some fellowships or competitions that then would be open for researchers outside that university. So that's kind of Mellon. So I know we have art history and architecture and lots of people, but if you're a pure arts kind of, or whatever the appropriate term is, if there is such a thing as pure arts, the Getty Foundation has a strong specific focus on the arts. So for individuals, they have scholars and library research fellowships. All of those, I believe, you have to actually go to the Getty Center or Villa. I did my PhD at UCLA. It's a beautiful place to wander around if you've never been there. I'm sure you guys would appreciate it a lot more than me. In terms of, they also have what they call projects, and so project grants don't go to an individual, they go to an organization. NEA and such, a lot of those rules are the same, but they go to the organization kind of for the PIs who submit it. This, they really kind of seem to want a lot more of an organizational focus. So if like you have 3 or 4 colleagues together working on something that fits into these categories, you might want to contact them. Some things that were there is connecting art histories and digital art histories. So if that's something that kind of fits with your project. They also have this PST art, which is art and science. It's definitely LA focused. Everything I could find for that was LA focused, and some of their statements about what it's for seem to be focused on Southern California. But I couldn't find any information that they only considered Southern California. So this is one of those where probably not the best fit, but if you are doing art and science stuff and you can't find anything else, you might, send them an email and say, would you consider this? Okay. And the reason why we're next going to go into the SPIN database thing is that there are many, many others, but they are very, very specialized. And I don't want to waste everyone's time throwing out individual ones that might be of interest to like one person. So kind of to throw an example, if you are writing on modern art, the Warhol Foundation for Visual Arts will, I don't want to say they will definitely give you a grant, but they fund specifically writing projects on modern art. These can be a bit harder to find. As with anything that's specialized, they're not going to come up first in the Google results. But the nice thing is if you find something that aligns with your specific work very well, that's narrow, you've got a much better shot than NEA where you're like competing with artists in every single field all across the country doing a bunch of different things. So that's why we're next going to go into the SPIN database. Yeah. Those are my concluding slides. Okay. Questions? Okay. That was a lot of speaking by me. How about if we take like a few minute pause, get some water, I want some water, get something to eat, and I'll approve the SPIN database requests that have come in
Sounds
from the
good.
beginning, and then we will reconvene.
Yeah. So one thing I want to add to it is that, these resources are really wonderful, and I know